For the last 100 years or so, a variety of psychologists have been studying human development. And oftentimes they focus on our upbringing when we're the most formative and trying to see kind of cause and effect relationships or patterns to say, how did we get to be the way we are, as diverse as we are? And they often identify stages of development. And it seems like each psychologist is trying to make a name for him or herself and comes up with a different series of explanations, but they all seem to make a little bit of sense if we stop and think about how we are raised, not just in our own house of formation, but also based upon our level of comprehension at the time. So an infant who doesn't understand things at a rational level kind of gets from good and bad responses how to behave. The rule of the house is the rule of the house, even if you don't understand it. And many times they're undeniable. Touch a hot pan, you get burned. You do a few things and you get scolded by it, or by your parents, you realize you just don't do that. But as you evolve, we're supposed to get to the point where we start to understand perhaps the reasoning or the rules behind things. Not only understanding the laws of physics, but also understanding why our parents are asking us to do some things and not other things, to see more of the cause and effect relationships besides the reward or the punishment. Some psychologists say that we'll sometimes get to a stage where we are so connected with the response, the consequence, that we actually seek to be a good person just to get the reward without even knowing what it is that we're actually doing. We get to an innocent, loving stage where we're just trying to, and you often see this with a little toddler that is taught to share. They don't even know what the sharing does, they just know it evokes a good response from the adults. And they want to do more of it. Then sometimes we get to the point where we're frustrated and we like rules and regulations because at least it puts some structure in our chaotic world. And sometimes we never let go of that stage, and for good reason. We live in a world with rules, and I'm going to go drive 55 miles an hour even if I'm on a deserted stretch in the middle of nowhere, and there's no practical reason for me to just drive 55. I'm going to do it because it's the law. And then I become very judgmental when other people bend the law for one reason or another. Then we're supposed to get to the stage where we look beyond the rules and the regulations and even beyond the consequences to say, is there a moral good beyond what we've got already articulated? We encounter this in our culture when people are trying to feed the poor, and there might have been city ordinances making it illegal to feed the homeless because it's going to raise a bigger problem. And the people making that choice have to say, all right, which is the greater good here, to feed the hungry or to obey the law? And so sometimes we have to dig a little bit deeper to go a little bit beyond the letter of the law to understand the spirit of the law. And then there's this altruism that basically says, we're going to try to do our absolute best according to our heart, even if we don't have a rational basis for it. The person that sees that our recycling system is a mess and they still continue to pick up rubbish along the roadside, knowing that it's not going to make a huge impact in the environment, but it's ingrained in their person that they want the world to be a better place. Mother Teresa did amazing amounts of work for the poor, and there's countless poor left to be helped. It was in her inner nature to do this. If we look at human development, we start to see a parallel between the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is rooted in an older approach where there's rules and regulations, there are consequences, and this is what you're doing because you just don't understand how God operates yet. Jesus comes along and without denying anything of the letter of the law, says we're really supposed to be paying attention to the spirit of the law. Do you understand that this is all rooted on love of God and love of our neighbor? And so Jesus is waiting for us and calling us to a more conscious approach to things and hopefully to an altruistic state. We see this parallel in our first reading in the gospel. The first reading is about common sense, the common good, Just do things and wisely and it'll work out for you. We know that what goes around comes around. If you're an evil person, it's going to catch up with you. If you're a good, honest person, it's going to work out for you. In an ideal world, that is true. And then the gospel comes along and Jesus basically says, those who are obedient to the law of God are my sisters, my brothers, my mother. Basically saying there's an intimacy and a bond and a connection between those who are trying to do good for no other reason that they want the world to be a better place, that they want the kingdom of God to be here on earth, are actually familially connected with Jesus. It's no longer a matter of you do this and you're going to be condemned. It's a matter of I'm going to do the best I can because I absolutely are in love with this notion that God's world is a better place than our own. And so I hope that we as a culture can kind of pay attention to our development and find out that maybe we've regressed in certain places. And maybe even in our spiritual lives. Maybe we're doing the right thing, but we could perhaps improve on our reason.